Handling the Undead. It's looking at it, I had a couple of thoughts initially. It reminded me of something of the size of project that Dick Smith would have done back in the day, where out of Larchmont, having his little lab and whatnot, because it's a very, very tight, intimate kind of story. And
Yes.
I want to hear how you got involved with that, because one of the things you wrote me, you said that it's not a typical zombie movie. In fact, I really liked the point that you shared about you would yell out "zombie alert" if you thought it was becoming too cliche. So here's a question I have first. Had you ever thought about doing a zombie movie? And was there anything on your bucket list that you had created prior, obviously, to this movie, going, well, if I do a zombie movie, I'd like to do this because I don't think it's been seen?
Yeah, well, so I had done one with my old colleague Thomas many years ago, and that was more like it was a small Danish zombie film, and it was classic zombies. And I'm one of the things that I think I really enjoy doing, that I'm very interested in, is realism. I like realism. I like it when I do injury makeup. I always find inspiration in looking at real injuries and always trying to avoid like cliches. You know how they always have that broken lip that's always like a line, and it doesn't look like that. So I'm very interested in realism. So I have so that part of it has always interested me. And I always figured that if I was to do something that I found scary, it would be like, what if, why don't the zombies look like actual dead people? That would be the scariest thing. And we also had some thoughts on this where I suggested things that were not used. For example, we have this drowned man. I wanted him, we don't see him very much, but there was originally more in the script. And I wanted him to be naked, because that would be very spooky. But if you found somebody in the water, either without pants or completely naked, that would be difficult to cope with in a certain way. So I had ideas like this to keep like realism in it, which I just thought would be interesting. And also, if you want to have a sense of, it's a film about sorrow and loss and love. And life and death are, death is a very physical thing. What happens to the body when you die, and that's sort of, I think it's interesting to deal with that combined with sorrow. So in that sense, I thought that I'd be very interested in doing. I really wanted to do this film when they approached me, because I was very interested in the physical aspect of death, not as a horror spoof of anything, but just like, this is a dead person, this is what happens.
It's interesting. People die. I just heard these statistics recently. I think someone dies every 3 seconds.
Probably.
It's a part of life. There's just like there's people being born, there's people dying, but it's when someone's leaving this world, not so much. It's a different thing, and we kind of avoid a lot of that, and so that in itself could create be kind of scary. And I agree with you. Finding a naked dead person in the water would be disturbing in many ways.
Yeah, and it would be realistic. Zombies are always dressed up. It's like, why are they? And then also, just to what you were saying, I remember when many years ago I read Pet Sematary by Stephen King. He also wrote like, death is a mystery. Death is a mystery, burial's a secret. So all these things about the body and what happens, and it's all secretive, but it's it's what happens. We've all seen, if we walk in the forest or something, find a carcass of it, it's what happens. It is what it is.
See, like you're talking about your drowned man, him being nude. Wasn't there? It just made me think of that. Night of the Living Dead. Wasn't there like a nude girl walking around in that film, or was it she just in her undergarment.
Maybe there was actually. I don't recall, but there's something about that I might have to see it again.
Yeah, I'm not a
So,
huge zombie person. There are people that are like really into zombies, but there's like you, the things that are more realistic, that anatomically are plausible and have art to them in the paint jobs. More interested in that than just the goggle-eyed zombie things that are the cliches. What were some of the other cliches you were trying to avoid?
well, there was a lot of them, and it was very interesting working with the director Tia, because she hadn't. I think because I'm a makeup artist, I had seen more zombie films than her, so there were some things that she wasn't thinking about. The drowned man originally was to reach in a door, and they would slam the door on it, and the hand was to fall off. I'm like, fall off? That's a little weird. So I had the suggestion that maybe the skin would slide off the hand. That would maybe be more realistic and not a cliche. So there was lots of thoughts like that. Generally, actually, it was a lot with that brown man, but he ended up being a very small part of the. And
as an artist, you're always trying to see if you can add to and contribute to the story and the vision of the filmmakers. So this is an example of one where, obviously there's ones that they do embrace, and then there's ones that they pass on.
Yes.
So which ones did they embrace and which ones did they pass on?
Well, it was. I'll tell you, it was mostly budget that was giving us problems. So it's easier to have a dressed drowned man, much cheaper. Also, I also had a wonderful idea that he was to stand in front of her, our female lead, and like he was going to say something, and then he would go, and then like a fish or an eel or something would come out his mouth. But it was just budget. It didn't happen. Yeah. I forgot what your question was. Sorry.
I was seeing which ones they embraced. Passed on. So you're saying budget was oftentimes the decision maker in that.
Yes, but generally, we also had to. It's a small art film in a way. So we and maybe it didn't have a huge budget. I'm not complaining. Everything was fine, but we had to make, like, for example, we also had to figure out our main dead character is the dead boy, Elias. And he's I don't know, he's 6 years old or something. And we had to sort of figure out what to do with him. Can we use a real child and do his makeup? How long is that going to take in the morning? And can he really act as dead as we wanted? So we had to also figure out the dynamics of these dead people, for example. The longer they had been dead, the more slow they would be. And little kids like that, they're just full of life and energy. So, and he had to have been dead for quite a long time. So he had to be very, very slow moving. And that's why we ended up late figuring out that we needed to do a dummy instead of using the actor. There's only one scene where we used the child actor.
That was my question. I want to see if he was in it at all. And how old was he? Was he 6?
I don't recall, but we only saw him from the back. But we could tell when I was, when they cast the kid, he came to Denmark with his mom for a body casting. Like a body scan, and you could just tell in that age it would have been, there's so much they don't even know what a film really is. They have no idea how they make it. So I'm so glad we ended up using a dummy for him. It's very tricky age to just the level of comprehension and the general topic would have been tough for him.
Did you do a traditional head cast on him?
No, everything was scanned. I had to sculpt it a lot anyways, so I figured we just had him scanned.
Actually, I worked on Pet Sematary, the movie that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't cast the little boy. I forgot his name, Miko or something like that, or Nico. I never
He
met
was
him.
really small, wasn't he? Like 3 or 4 or something.
He was really little. Lance Anderson hired me to work for a time in his shop, and I was working with some of the casts of him, and you could see he was getting a little upset or whatnot. You could see it in the cast because it's not a great cast.
No.
Now we have these technologies that make that part a little better. So good on you guys for figuring that out. What did you use for reference material for the looks for this movie?
Well, so it was a combination of stuff that Tia, our director, found. She was very tough with it. I don't have much stomach for it, but we all went with, of course, pictures of real images.
Mm-hmm.
So for the drowned man, I had some very disturbing references from Iceland. I had 2 pictures that had my interest. One was a person where that had these dark patches of skin, like the drowned man I did, which I thought were wonderful. And then it had this very opaque skin and these dark patches. And then there was another one that was like more deformed and swollen. So I combined those 2. And the hair was gone in a lot of areas. So I only did a little hair on him up here, and then we moved it about. And the eye sockets were empty. And I thought it was just a horrible, disturbing look. And then it was difficult with the kid because he was really exhumed. He'd been buried for 2 weeks in, I believe, in your country. Do they always embalm people? They don't do that in Denmark, anyways, or in Scandinavia. We don't embalm, so it's a natural process. So, but I tried to figure out what would you look like after a couple of weeks in the ground. We couldn't find anything really. And then the child was very difficult because, so in the story, very briefly said, something happens in the city of Oslo and all the dead awaken. And this little child awakens, the grandfather goes out, hears him knocking in the coffin and takes him up and takes him home, and the mother sees him, and she has to, if it was too horrifying, it was a very difficult balance because he had to look pretty bad, but we all had to watch it without vomiting, and he had to sort of, I could have done all these wonderful things with the mouth area all swollen up and all that stuff, but it would have been difficult to watch and for the mother to take care of him. So I had to try to stay with him looking fairly whole and fairly in the same shape. So I just did a lot of discoloration. And, of course, as it always goes, I would have done it all completely different today. But I think it turned out nice, but it was a very difficult balance.
That is tricky to do that. Otherwise, the motivations of the character are going to seem very odd and not make sense to the audience. You think,
yes.
You will only go so far. There's the mother instinct, but then he looks like he's still alive but hurting and whatnot, there's gonna be that nurturing side. But if he looked absolutely like a bag of hamburger or something, that it's a different story. So good. Those are interesting, always story points on what you do. In fact, I got a question on got a couple of them. One, you said that there's 4 zombies that are in the film.
Yes.
But and I know that you said also you wrote that you made a few like transfer pieces for the makeup department. But did you actually work on any other characters besides the 4? That's one.
No.
Okay,
no. So there's that's a wonderful Norwegian colleague I have called Live. She did all the regular makeup. I did the zombies. That was it.
Yeah. And on set, was it just you doing the application? Yeah.
Yes.
What about in the lab? You actually made a fair amount of molds for those 4 characters that's there. Yeah. Is that all you?
Yep, all me. I had Thomas, my old colleague, do the body under the clothes for the kid, and I had a little bit of help with hair punching. Other than that, this is Denmark. Oh, that's how. Well, you can't even say it. That's how I work. I do it all myself, and has advantages and disadvantages. I got to learn to maybe get a little more help in, but often I end up just doing it myself.
Well, my comparison to Dick Smith's old way of doing things still
Yes.
holds true then. You know, and looking at the appliances, one of the ones I saw that you still had on the positive with the flashing on it,
Yes.
it looks like there might be some intrinsic color going on there, almost like flocking, but I don't know if that's just the grain from the picture. Is that all that is?
It's a grain from the picture. It was actually it was just straight up normal silicone pieces, and actually no flocking in them either. Again, one of these that was for the character Eva, a woman who dies in a car crash, and she had just died when we see her, so she had to look just as she would from the car crash. And the tricky thing with her was that they wanted good contact with her eyes. They wanted so I wanted to do like a more swollen face, but didn't really work out with that. So, and then she had to have, I wanted her to have like injuries from the car crash. But it was also a little tricky because the first scene we see her when she comes alive again, it is she has just died and her husband come in. So I was like, so what would they do? Wouldn't they, you know, if she had cuts on her face, even though, wouldn't they put something over that? And we figured they would, so I put some tape over some of it. And either way, in the film, it was a little bit frustrating for me because I didn't have a test makeup on her. Well, I had one the day before, but I couldn't really change major things. And but I think as it ended up in the film, it looked pretty good.
You know, and you showed a photo of all those molds. I see that you used a few different materials for making your molds on there. So which ones were you using, and what was the decision process about the choices you were making for that particular role?
For her, for the
I noticed all your molds.
All of it, yeah. Well, so I have a wonderful mold system that I'd be happy to, which is, it's not quite non-toxic, but it's getting there. So all my molds are generally made from, is it called epoxycal? What's it called? And then I use acrylic one, which is like plaster type, wonderful, very strong product that you can, so I laminate those two together, and then I use that for most of my molds. They're lightweight and they're very good.
There's ones I see that are more white. Is that the ones you think that are epoxycal?
All the white ones, those are just, there's a lot of plaster bandage molds for when I do like they're just thin silicone molds to create my positives.
And then there's ones that are peach color.
The peach colors, those are acrylic one, which is, I don't know if you still can't, I was talking to Vince van Dyke about it, you still can't get that where you're located. It's a really wonderful product. Yeah, again, like a laminated type of plaster with an acrylic binder. It's wonderful stuff. Like kind of like, or very much like Jesmonite, just better. And then the blue molds you see down there, like with the epoxy coating and then the acrylic one. I just put color in because then it looks a little cooler, and that's basically it.
And then I see you have one positive that looks like it's like a 1630 or something, the gray one.
The gray one is, I had her scanned because she was claustrophobic, so I had her scanned, and then I just painted it gray. For the clay I use is gray.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you asked these questions. I almost forgot that you are into these nerdy aspects as well.
Yeah, I used to do a fair amount of this back in the day.
I know, I know you did. I know you did.
Now there's ones that there's more. Some of the molds are more pink, and there's some that are peach in color. Like I see the ones, the smaller ones towards the bottom.
Yeah, the peach ones are just like a rigid foam to put the pieces on.
Oh, okay.
Because it's nicer. Yeah, so that's just what that is.
It reminds me a lot of peach dye stone that I used to use for some positives, usually for teeth or something.
I think I remember seeing that existence. Yeah.
And then there's one positive down there that's yellow. It looks like it's a urethane.
Yes, but that isn't. That's a print of the scan of the actual boy. as you can see more in the bottom right side, there's some transfers. You can see those sheets there for the woman, Elizabeth, the old woman that dies. She gets these, I think it has a specific word. I can't remember what the actual real word is. When you start to decompose, you sometimes get these dark, like a big blisters on the skin. So I had to recreate that. So I put some, I made some transfers, put them on, and then put like a thin Baldy's thing over that and injected it with KY jelly that I had tinted. It worked really well, I think, actually.
So I liked hearing that you did that with the Baldies and the tinted KY.
Well,
Any other kind of construction techniques you did on this?
Well, I actually tried for all her blisters. I had I don't, maybe they're in the piece. I don't know. I did tons of pieces where I tried making them with the very soft silicone to glue them on as like prosthetic pieces. But it just looked much cooler having the Baldy skin. Also, she was a very old woman, so something about the way her skin moved. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they would break and then it would just look fantastic. But other than that, no, nothing particularly interesting regarding molds. One time, if you want, I'll be happy to explain these wonderful, very thin molds that I use that you can just clamp them up with tiny little clamps. I can send you a picture of it if you want to see it. It's really cool. So no big molds that needs like clamming. I just put these little tiny little glue clamps on there, and it's just a wonderful way to make molds.
Who made your lenses?
Oh, so either I should just say what I think of them and not say who made them. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Well, I wanted them, so I would have liked to have Christina Carrot do them, and something about time. And then I tried 9mm. They didn't have time. So let me just say I had them made in England, and they were the worst. They were basically not usable. Some of them were not usable. I sent them a design. They wait till 2 days before delivery. They send me a picture and they say something like this, and it had nothing to do with the design I had sent. I was very specific with colors, and I'm very thorough with. I sent them a picture of the design on an eyeball. Then I sent a picture of the design on a gray background, on a white background, and on a black background. And they were just terrible lenses. They were made in England by somebody. And okay. I think they ended up getting their money back. And on at least, on one of them, they had to end up doing it digitally.
In fact, when the piece that you wrote for me, you mentioned a few times throughout it where there's a cooperation between you and the visual effects department to be able to, enhance a little this, a little that. Do you enjoy that that interaction and that methodology?
I enjoyed it a lot because I was. In this case, for several reasons I enjoyed it. First of all, they were very nice and very talented people. But also we needed to, so the boy was, the dead boy was mostly where we had our issues. It was tricky because I had to make a dummy, and as I also told Thea, our director, if you lay him down and don't do anything, it's just a dummy lying there. It doesn't do anything. So we would puppeteer sort of body movements, chest movements. It would be me and then one or two other puppeteers just moving it about slightly. But all the facial expressions were done digitally. The only thing I contributed with practically was I did a set of closed eyes. I had a little piece of his head just like that with the eyes closed that they also had. So for every picture, they had a reference of him with closed eyes. And then I just went through it with Thea, the director. In every scene, I was like, so maybe this scene, why not? Why is his mouth? Maybe we should just have his mouth closed in the whole scene, because he just has the static expression, and instead of in every take going from that, then when someone would close his mouth, and then we'd have the eyes open slightly and maybe one opening a little before the other and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We would just get really nerdy about it, and they spend a long time on it. And I think most of it looks really, really good.
Now, we talked about how budget was such a consideration for this. It doesn't seem, when I hear you talk about the enhancement that's being done
Mhm.
with CGI. I don't hear you really reference that. So, what was that affordable for the production they had? Was that
I
easy for them
don't.
to do?
I, I don't know about their VFX budget. I think they ended up spending more on it than they expect. But I don't know actually. I don't know. So when we found out it was a dummy, we just knew we had to do it like that. And I hope the VFX company made the proper adjustments.
Then it's out of your hands. It's one of those things where you hope that they're going to do a good job.
Yeah, and there was just a few. Just to say, there was a few other things that were obviously necessary. We had the drowned man for. So for the drowned man, if I can say something about that, I wanted him to be like very static. I thought that was interesting to have like a not full of expression, because I had a feeling, I have no idea, but when I saw those corpses, I saw the drowned real persons. I don't know, but I had a feeling that they were very hard. Maybe I don't know, but it was just a sort of the impression I got. So I wanted him to be like mask like. So the drowned man is really an over the head mask I made. So I had to make, of course, holes for his eyes, and then again I made a reference silicone piece for the eye sockets and gave it to the digital people, and then they fixed that. But and I haven't talked to Thea, the director, about it. The little he's still in the film, he comes towards a window and then he does some sort of expression that he wasn't able to do. And I was like, well, maybe they didn't like the static look after all.
Yeah, you never know. It seems like I understand the reasoning that you were choosing on that, but it's they like actually Rick Baker's makeup on Tiny Ron as kind of the rando Hatton character in, was it the Rocketeer? And it's a beautiful makeup, but he never makes any expressions in it. And I've worked with Tiny Ron, so I know, he's certainly capable of doing that. That must have been the direction he received from Joe Johnston. I think he was the director for that. But some people comment and think, oh, well, that makeup looks really stiff. That's a performance choice, but that's the interpretation of that. So maybe that's what they were thinking with your makeup.
Yeah, maybe suddenly when they saw it, they were like, but they also we had some long days, and we were also filming on real actual film, which gave us, so there's a couple of days where we didn't get quite what we needed because the sun was going down, and you can't really push it that much when it's analog.
You guys were shooting on real film.
Yeah, and I've tried that several times lately. It's coming back.
That's nice. And you and I were talking previously before we started recording about how there can be throwbacks to different technologies. So that's good. Well, it's working for Nolan, his movies.
It is. But you know what? Then there was something I wasn't aware of, or I wasn't thinking enough about, was that for Eva, the character in the car crash, I figured that thing that always happens when it goes a little gray, you have to punch up with a lot more red on film. So I figured, well, silicone's translucent, so maybe that's not an issue, but it was. So on her, you could see sort of the color difference, even though it was the translucent makeup. So, but that's the difficult thing, prosthetics and analog is, you get those gray noses there, we've all, it's difficult.
Thing that I was noting about, I really enjoyed, is that I didn't see anybody in a COVID mask.
No, that's true. It was after COVID.
So that's really great. That's one of the things that, there's different people are going to have different opinions, but it's just the ever-present mask, for there to be that seems like such an unnatural thing in which way to work and interact with people. I think there's people that are still doing it, but at least for you find in filmmaking what you're doing, that people have moved on from that.
Yes, in Denmark, we have completely moved on. I think even to the point where I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't mind having a bit of hand sanitizer by the buffet, I think people have moved away, but also forgotten their good manners again, wash those hands. cough like that. So it's like they've forgotten everything. I don't know what it's like where you're at, but that's here. It's they've totally forgotten. We've completely moved on. There's no issues with it here anymore.
How long was the shoot?
Well, it was over a couple of months, and we filmed in Sweden and Norway, obviously, and then surprisingly in Greece. It was a financial decision. So Elizabeth, our old corpse, everything with her was filmed in Greece, and also she was a Greek actress. She hardly spoke English, but she wasn't to speak in the film, so it didn't really matter. Oh, and an interesting thing, that was a choice that I suggested that I think really worked well is the old woman that dies. Like on a corpse, you get that waxy, yellowish type of color. And I was like, and you know how it goes, and you start to put makeup on somebody, and then the skin goes totally opaque, and then it's just difficult to do. So we remove all reds from her digitally. It really worked well. And she was a very the dead woman. She was a bit darker because also she was a Greek woman, but altogether, I think it was a wonderful way to do it. So she's not wearing any. She's wearing the makeup I did with veins and the blisters on the skin, but no, I didn't do anything to her skin tone.
You know, you alluded to this earlier, and I wanted to kind of hit on that. You know, most artists, when they get to an end of a project, they feel like there's things that they could have improved if there had been more time or more money, or the big one is that things that you learned or discovered through the process, but you're already too far into it to be able to change that. I was wondering, for Handling the Undead, what were your takeaways on that? If you could get Mr. Wells' machine and go back and do that again, what would you change?
I don't know. It's difficult because there's a billion things I generally would have. I really liked I liked the drowned man a lot. I would have loved to see him more. And the boy turned out nice. Maybe we should have had one more dummy with a different expression. Maybe that would have been nice. Other than that, I think in a way it was fine. But I would have, if I was to do the paint job on the boy again, if I was to sculpt him again, I've done it all better. But that's how it goes.
It is.
That's how it goes for me, anyways.
I'm sure Ridley Scott and Spielberg and Nolan, I'm sure they all, when they watch the films they made, they go, "Oh, I'm really happy about this thing. I sure wish we could have done that." And then there's all these, if they were watching it, all these little, knowing every decision was in it. And we might look at it as a masterpiece that thinks it's perfect, but every artist has little things like that, nuances they would like to do differently.
Yeah, but I think also there's a difference between sometimes there's so many enormously talented people. When you scroll through Instagram at all my fantastic colleagues, it's amazing the work that's done. And so there's stuff but I just don't feel that I'm, they're just a billion times better on some things. But then there's a whole different experience, and that's watching the film. If for example, the Eva character with her car crash, it was sort of some chaotic days, and a very nice actress, but she was very, moving about and talking a lot, and it was difficult getting her to sit still, and I wasn't really happy with it, and maybe it should have been more, but then I saw the film and it was good, just watching it, and so that can help sometimes, I think, or sometimes, of course, it could go the other way around too.
Final question.
Yes.
Is there any type of makeup, categorically, or type of film that you haven't done that you still have on your bucket list that you'd like to do?
I think for me, no, I actually think a film like this one, not as with sort of particularly with the topic or that it's a zombie, but for me, to be lucky enough to be a part of a whole film. I was a part of this whole film from before it started till after, and I feel I've been a part of something, and I haven't felt that for many years. So I'd love more of that. Instead of coming in 2 days here to do the, or the whatever, but to be sort of a part and having talks about these sensitive, wonderful topics, and how do we tell it in a wonderful way, to be a part of that and to find my place in that. I thought that was wonderful. I'd love more of that.
Awesome. Great answer. Good place for us to stop. Morten, thank you for, telling us about your journey on Handling the Undead. A cool little film. Hopefully more people get a chance to see that. And maybe, as a result of this interview, that some of our colleagues will check it out. I appreciate you making time.
And thank you so much, Michael.